Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Harm Smit. I'm from the ECBA, the European Countries Biologists Association. Tonight might be slightly different compared to other nights because our Zoom expert and our guardian angel Simon is ill tonight. So if things go wrong, it's all on my account. My apologies on that beforehand. Pleased to have you all here. I'm really happy to have Anna Eiglsperger here. Eiglsperger, we will talk about her a little bit later. Normally, we first have a slight introduction on the ECBA and what we're actually trying to accomplish here. First of all, about the ECBA. Oh, sorry. By the way, there's a question and answer possibility for you to ask questions. And if you have questions during her lecture, we will discuss that later on. So first about the ECBA. The ECBA is the European Countries Biologists Association. That is an association of associations, so we do not have individual members, but we're sort of a platform wherein the European biologists organizations can communicate and cooperate. So for instance, I'm the treasurer of the Dutch Institute of Biology, and we're here in close relation to the VBO, the German Institute of Biology. So that's the ECBA, and in good Dutch saying, biologists are like a wheelbarrow full of frogs. We try to move them forward and keep all the frogs in the wheelbarrow. So what is our main issue? And I think that's a personal one for me. I think the voice of biologists is very important, but it's not enough heard. And it is always good to point at other people, but also look at yourself. And I think we are not proud enough of ourselves to be a biologist. We should be more proud of ourselves because proud people speak up. And if you want to know how this works, talk to an Italian biologist. They can explain that to you in a perfect manner, better than I can. But that's why we use the hashtag proud to be biologists, because if you're proud, you're able to make this difference. Otherwise, you're not. That is a typical biological thing, in my opinion. So if you disagree, I would be really pleased to hear that, because that would mean we're making progress here. Why are we important? Well, there's no planet B. Yeah, so we're proud but not happy to be a biologist because there's all kinds of things going wrong. And the biggest problem is that it is a bit a frog, and again a frog in a pan of hot water when you can boil it without the frog jumping out because it doesn't notice the changes. And if you look at biologists looking around, we do see the changes, but nevertheless we don't see them in general. And in the Netherlands we just had a general election, and guess what? Climate has moved down in the priority range once again, because today is much more important than tomorrow, apparently. Next. So we are at the ECBA is involved in a synapses project. We can complain, but complaining doesn't help us, so we have to act. And what we're doing is acting within the synapses project, which is an Erasmus School Heads and Teacher Training Academy on teaching for sustainability, where we try at least to provide teachers with a range of options you can use directly in the classroom. And they're all aimed at sustainability citizenship, which is a wider scope of just talking about sustainability. It also involves what are you going to do. So it involves actively engaging environmental, social, and economic sustainability efforts in the school, but also in a wider context. So what is it? Sustainability citizenship. It emphasizes the participation, advocacy, and informed decision-making rather than a passive support. So it means that we can't sit here and complain. We have to do actually stuff. And as sustainable citizen, the person we wish we had around us, but very hard to find, recognizes how the global systems are interconnected, and there's a person who takes responsibility for contributing to a positive change, which is also very important that we still engage climate in a positive manner, because if you want people to follow you, you better be pleasable to follow. Well, it's the Synapses consortium, but a whole lot of people are involved, a lot of institutes are involved. So we have several European countries and educational institutes who are involved in this program. And that ends the introduction of the ECBA and why we are here. For those of you who are a teacher, it would be really great if you can fill out the survey. You can just use your phone and click on this QR code, because that will help us to understand a bit more about you and how you envisioned this lecture. All right. So tonight we're very happy to have Anna Eiglsperger here. She's head of the Bio Bioeconomy Council and head of the office of that. And she's active in the interface between business, science, politics, and society to promote the bioeconomy. And I think bioeconomy is very important. And I have a personal anecdote about ecology and economy. That was, I would say, 30 years ago. As a student, we organized symposia on the environment in Eastern Europe. And we had some ecologists flying in from Germany. And I was used to ecologists to being someone who knitted their own shirts. And there were two people coming in on a plane wearing a tie. And I realized that if you want to be heard, you have to talk and look like the people you want to talk to. So that was for me an important issue. So I said, there are people who do understand the rest of the world as well, and not only can mumble on about their own um, idea of ecology and how things are going wrong, but they're also able to communicate to other people in a manner which is meaningful to the other people, not just for yourself. All right. Anna Eiglsperger, she studied renewable resources at the Technical University of Munich. So she is sitting, I think she's sitting right in one of the European centers of bioeconomy, where Munich stands out as an example, as far as I can tell, for the last 20 years or so. So I'm very happy to share the floor with Anna Eiglsperger, so you can meet her and hear to what she has to say. If things go wrong, it's all my fault, so I'll try to stop it and Anna will try to start.
I do. Thank you, Harm, for the kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. I'll try to share my slides. Just a moment. Could you confirm if you see my title slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So hello again. I'm really happy to be here tonight and to talk about the circular bioeconomy and the solutions it might provide for a little bit better planet, a little more sustainable planet and sustainable world. Hopefully, I'm gonna talk about more than just Lederhos'n, but this is a very typical Bavarian clothing you have all seen before, the traditional Bavarian trousers. But what it is about the Bavarian Lederhos'n you see on the picture here, I'll show you in a few minutes, since it's not the traditional Lederhos'n. But before we start, I'd like to have a few words on the Bavarian Expert Council on the Bioeconomy. It was convened in 2015 by the Bavarian State Ministry of Food, Agriculture and Forestry. And since 2019, the Bavarian State Ministry of Economic Affairs, Regional Development and Energy has been responsible for the bioeconomy, and therefore the council that tries to do the policy consulting for our region. And we do have experts from different companies and academia in the council. It consists of expertises within the wood-based bioeconomy. That's one of the big topics we have in Bavaria, since it's quite wood-rich region. Also the construction sector, the packaging sector. We do have scientists from very different areas within the bioeconomy sector, chemical engineering, process engineering, the recycling, and many different end-of-life scenarios, I would say, in the bioeconomy. And we do have industrial perspectives from the potentials that come with big biorefineries and industrial bioeconomy in using sugars to produce different applications or using wood. And we do have the area or the expertise of food engineering, I would say, food technology, and also a kind of meta topic, the ethics, environmental ethics that are also part of the bioeconomy. It aims to be a more sustainable economy than the one we have at the moment. So it's quite diverse, and we have many perspectives, which is not always that easy to combine and to find consensus. But that's what makes the work so interesting. And then we have our office located at the Competence Center for Renewable Resources, the so-called CONARO, which is short in German for Kompetenzzentrum für nachwachsende Rohstoffe, in Straubing. It's in eastern Bavaria, and it is kind of a economy cluster of Bavaria. Many institutions, from research to industry to networking in institutions, sit in our region. And so does the office of the Bioeconomy Council, and that is me and my colleague Daniel Kapphammer. We try to coordinate the work of the council members. What are the main topics of the Bioeconomy Council? One, we have the bioeconomy strategy of Bavaria. I'm going to talk about that later on. And on the one hand, we have the implementation of the measures that come with that strategy. And we also do some kind of monitoring, as far as that's possible, on the implementation of that measures. That's one of our big topics. Next is conceptual issues of the bioeconomy. Of course, as a policy council, expert council, they do policy consulting for our Bavarian state government. And we also develop and publish position papers on different recent topics that are discussed in policy. And the lower two blocks focus on networking aspects. On the one hand, we coordinate our regional network. We work with different stakeholders and clusters that are related to the topics of the bioeconomy. But we also do that on a national level, since there are also many emerging and developing and existing networks. Sometimes it's also on the European level. And the last part is to foster the social dialogue on the bioeconomy, and we try to spread the information about the concept of a circular bioeconomy and foster and support the knowledge transfer about bioeconomy. To come back to the Lederhos'n that's on my title slide, I decided that this might be a good example to show how bioeconomy brings together innovation and tradition, since this Lederhos'n is not simply made, as you might have seen it before, or you might suggest, made from cow leather or deer leather. It is made from fungi. Fungi are a very interesting material or plant for the bioeconomy with big potentials. And this leather trousers was one project that is commissioned by Biotopia at the Natural History Museum of Bavaria. And it was made of a new material that was developed by an US-American company. And the material is called fine mycelium. Looks like leather, feels like leather, but is not, and it grows from fungal fibers. And also the embroideries you can see on it are bio-based, and they are made of mulberry silk. So that is how the bioeconomy comes to Bavaria. That is just one example. We'll have many more in the next few minutes. So we get into what is bioeconomy? That's the first big question to bring us all on the same level. I do not really know if you had contact with the topic before. So the first question we have to ask is, why do we need a bioeconomy? In policy matters, we hear about the decarbonization all over, and in all areas we try to decarbonize our industry, our economy. And on this graphic you can see that for the energy sector and for the transport sector, that is absolutely correct. It shows the development of the embedded carbon demand from today and as it is expected in 2050. And for those two sectors, we do see a big decrease in the embedded carbon demand, since we use renewable energies and we use electric cars. That works for those sectors. But regarding the materials and chemical sector, it's completely different. We will even see an increase in the demand for carbon. It will double, or is expected to double by 2050, which brings us to the question, how do we get that carbon demand or the carbon that is needed from more sustainable sources? That's where the bioeconomy comes in, and where we talk about a defossilization, to get rid of that fossil-based carbon and use sustainable carbon sources instead. We do have three options for that. One is CO2, carbon dioxide-based carbon. There's a lot of research going on in that field, but it's quite in the beginning. We do have recycling as one source, and we do have bio-based carbon to fill the demand that is expected in the future. And that's one of the big objectives of the bioeconomy, to bring that carbon from biomass, from agriculture and forestry, into use in the industry. So what is bioeconomy? It is sustainable, it is circular, it is bio-based. But I wanted to show you with this definition that the Bioeconomy Council published in 2024, that it is not that simple and not said in just one sentence. It's a quite holistic approach, quite holistic concept for a more sustainable economy. And I highlighted some basics about it. It is based on renewable, raw and residual materials, and also the renewable energies. It changes existing production and consumption patterns in favor of a circular economy. That is why we talk of the circular bioeconomy. And also it tries to foster the development of regional value chains and use the potential of rural areas and create regional value chains, and also the sufficiency, to the motto of less is more is also one of the components of the bioeconomy. It is quite complex, so many challenges come with it, and it's not that easy to implement, and that's why we need the political framework for a successful implementation. And before we get into that, we already had the Lederhos'n, that is quite the combination of innovation and tradition. But I'd like to highlight that, on the one hand, bioeconomy is old hat. People have always used nature. We make textiles from natural fibers. We use and heat with wood. Agriculture provides us with food. So the bioeconomy, therefore, is part of our everyday lives for the last centuries and I guess the last thousands of years. At the same time, utilization and processes are constantly evolving technologically and economically. And on the other hand, the bioeconomy is that big transformation process I was talking before. Fossil raw materials should not be replaced simply one by one by renewable ones. It is more of rethinking the whole system. It refers to a holistic concept for a sustainable bio-based way of life and economy, and especially when it comes to sustainability. I guess we all know that business as usual won't be possible simply with bio-based raw materials, but we need to face many more challenges. And therefore, one approach is the cradle-to-cradle principle, that we have a closer look in the circular bioeconomy, or how the bioeconomy even gets circular. You might have heard about that before. We have two cycles that fluently get into each other in the bioeconomy. On the left side, we have the biological cycle. It's like nature's circle, and it keeps materials safely in the biosphere after their consumption. And the materials involved can be organic and biodegradable, compostable. So after their use, they get back into the circle via the waste collection and composting, and can be reused as bio-based resources, organic waste, or the CO2 that comes from the processes. And the products are designed for the biological cycle and are made of materials that can safely decompose and return as nutrients into the soil. So they are supporting the ecosystem instead of polluting them. We have different applications that are created and designed especially for use cases like that, if they are likely to leak into environment, for example. And on the right side, we have the technical cycle, the industrial cycle, where materials that are durable are circulating in the technosphere and stay within the industrial system. The materials involved can be metals, glasses, and also, of course, plastics or synthetic fibers. But in the example of plastics or fibers, there is also the possibility that those materials are bio-based and also can stay in the cycle for when they are recycled, they are collected and sorted, and after chemical or mechanical recycling, get back as raw materials and can be reused. So it's not that easy to get that system running, and we have quite a long way to go till the cradle-to-cradle principle and the circular economy is implemented. And therefore we need political frameworks, and that's what brings me to the next question: what about policy? In this chapter, we have a closer look on the bioeconomy policy on the European level, and also on our national German level, and last on the Bavarian level. We do have our own dedicated Bavarian bioeconomy strategy. And we'll start on the European level. There is a bioeconomy strategy that was first published in 2012 and was updated in 2018, which builds the basis for the developments that have been there for the last couple of years. And there were some milestones since then. For example, in 2019, the publishment of the European Green Deal that sees the bioeconomy as a key enabler for the substitution of fossil resources. In 2020, we had the Circular Economy Action Plan, or the Farm to Fork strategy, both closely related to the obligations of the circular bioeconomy. In 2021, the former Horizon 2020 research funding was enlarged to Horizon Europe, starting from 21. and goes to 2027, where the bioeconomy also plays an important role. And in 2022, the first bioeconomy progress report was published, focusing on the developments since the updated bioeconomy strategy in 2018. And it is not like there wasn't any developments in the last few years, but I want to jump to the present. This year, the Clean Industrial Deal was published, also related to many topics within the bioeconomy. And we had a public consultation on the European Bioeconomy Strategy, and it is expected that an updated strategy will be published by the end of this year, hopefully the next few weeks. And to have a closer look on that bioeconomy strategy that was originally published in 2012, there are three main objectives. One is the expansion and strengthening of bio-based sectors. Second is the rapid Europe-wide implementation of the bioeconomy. And third, maybe one of the most important objectives, is the protection of the ecosystem and the research on ecological limits of the bioeconomy. In the summer, we had the public consultation I was already talking about, and expect that the strategy is updated by the end of 2025. And there are some expected objectives that are addressed with the new bioeconomy strategy. One is to enhance the long-term competitiveness and strategic autonomy and resilience of the bioeconomy. That might be one of the biggest challenges we have to face at the moment, since sustainable and bio-based products and applications are way more expensive than the traditional fossil-based materials. So we won't get the bioeconomy out of the box if the products are not on a level playing field with the fossil-based ones. The next is to ensure industrial leadership in addressing climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Then lead the emerging bio-based economy and drive biotechnology innovation. Also to secure sustainably supplied biomass. Again, one big question, where does all the biomass come from that we need for the bioeconomy? To create green jobs and ensure the skills in the bioeconomy, and to strengthen diversification of value streams. That's the status that we have. I don't have any news yet, but we expect to get the update in the very next days or weeks. So maybe I'll keep you updated if you're interested. Before we get on the national level of the bioeconomy policy, we'll have a look on bioeconomy policies all over Europe. As you can see in this map, there's many member states that already have dedicated bioeconomy strategies that see the potential of using biomass for a more sustainable economy. We do have some countries that have strategies in progress, and the countries that do not have their strategies already do have bioeconomy related strategies, like addressing the bioeconomy topics in their research strategies, innovation strategies, or else. The bioeconomy is all over Europe, and it also is addressed with our national German bioeconomy strategy. It has quite similar objectives to the European strategy: strengthen Germany's leading role in the bioeconomy and develop technologies and the jobs of tomorrow, define the guidelines and objectives of the federal government's bioeconomy policy. It brings together political activities within a coherent framework, and it provides for the development of an implementation plan, which is intended to serve as the basis for building a sustainable bioeconomy in Germany. We do not have that implementation plan yet. It has the objective to have recommendations for concrete policy measures to achieve the goals of the strategy with different focus areas like research funding, design of framework conditions and cross-cutting instruments, taking into account current developments from the very different industrial sectors, for example, that are related to the bioeconomy in the different German regions. But what we have is recommendations of the National Bioeconomy Expert Council. They were commissioned to develop those recommendations and publish them in 2023. They are 57 recommendations they've been working on, some of them together with the different regions and regional bioeconomy initiatives to create that coherent framework that is one of the objectives of the strategy. And the next step would be to develop that implementation plan. We'll still wait for that, and hopefully that will come in the near future. And within Germany, we do also have different regional bioeconomy strategies, also with different focus areas. In the northern parts of Germany, the use of algae and other marine resources, bio-based resources, are one of the focus topics that we do not address in the south, since we do not have the coast. And in the middle parts of Germany, we do have, for example, the Lausitzer Revier, the Mitteldeutsches Revier, or the Rheinisches Revier. They traditionally come from coal mining, and they also see the potential of using bio-based materials to make that shift from coal mining, fossil-based industry, to a more sustainable bio-based economy. Therefore, the Rheinisches Revier created a project together with different stakeholders, the so-called Bioeconomy Revier, where they try to implement the bioeconomy within a specific region together with industry policy and the research institutions they have and stakeholders for a sustainable shift. And we in Bavaria, we do have a clear focus, for example, on the wood-based bioeconomy. 2/3 of the land in Bavaria are covered with forests. So there's a lot of potential in using that wood in a sustainable way. And that brings me to our Bavarian bioeconomy strategy, Future.Bioeconomy.Bavaria, big words, and we'll see what the future brings with that. It was published in 2020, and then it has its focus on the material use of renewable resources. So we do not have a closer look on renewable energies in that strategy. It consists of 15 concrete policy measures to promote a bio-based economy. And what we did is we had a closer look on the implementation and the developments in those 15 measures and published a progress report on the bioeconomy strategy in the end of 2023. And what we did there is we created a category system that was like an expanded traffic light system. We had a green light for accomplished measures. We have ongoing measures. We also had a look if there were measures that had no activity at all. And we had measures that are so-called long-term measures because they could not simply be implemented in just a few years. Their approach was more of part of the big transformation, so they would need more time and are more complex to simply be fulfilled. Almost half of the 50 bioeconomy measures of the Bavarian strategy are already accomplished, which doesn't mean that there is no more need for action, but there was progress in that, and the measures were accomplished. We have quite a lot of measures that are ongoing. There were no measures with completely no activity. And there were many measures that are those long-term measures and still need some time to really be implemented. I brought some examples of the Bavarian strategy because they are very good examples and are working for a successful implementation of the bioeconomy. One was testing a bio-based t-shirt bag to promote organic recycling. Bringing more recycling into our system is one of the big challenges, so that fits into that. What they did there was they created a project with this so-called Biobeutel, a compostable plastic t-shirt bag that people could use in the supermarkets to collect fruit and vegetables and bring them home. And afterwards, they could collect the organic waste and give it to the organic waste disposal fraction. So afterwards, it could be recycled in a compost plant and could be decomposed there, which worked quite well. On the one hand, the results showed that people used it correctly and people correctly disposed it with the organic waste fraction, and therefore collected more bio-waste, more organic waste that is needed as a compost for agriculture, for example. And it also showed that the processes, the technical process in the composting plant worked quite well. The Biobeutel was compostable and fit quite well in the process. We do face some challenges there, since in most regions of Germany and also in Bavaria, those compostable recycling bags, t-shirt bags, are not allowed in the organic waste fraction. So that would be the next step, to have more tests, to test it in the field and test it in different composting plants to increase the amount of the organic waste that is collected. And the next measure is the Navareum. Navareum is a combination of two words. The German word for renewable resources is nachwachsende Rohstoffe. So they used that short word and combined it with the word museum, which came out as Navareum. It is a museum and information center learning platform, all about the topics related to the bioeconomy, how to use renewable materials, how to use them sustainable. It addresses the challenges we have to face with environmental pollution and climate change, and shows solutions that are more sustainable and that can help to transform to a more sustainable way of life and economy. If you ever get to see Straubing, I clearly recommend you to have a visit there. It is located in Straubing, as I said before, in our regional bioeconomy cluster. I clearly recommend you to have a stop there and let you be fascinated by the products they have there and by the stories they tell. It is very well received by teachers and school classes, and they get really good feedback. So one of the successful projects that came with the Bavarian bioeconomy strategy. The next two measures address one of the challenges I already talked about. Where does all the biomass come from that we need for the bioeconomy? The Bavarian State Ministries of Economic Affairs and for Agriculture and Forestry want to develop a biomass resource strategy to have a direction on how to use the biomass we have in an efficient and in a sustainable way. And therefore, they did a study on the availability of renewable resources. That study was completed, and we do have the results showing that in the first place, the biomass we have is in use, and also the disposals from that are used somehow, even if they get back to the agricultural cycle. So the bigger question is, can we use it more efficiently and more sustainably? And can we create new value chains and create new value, better value for that materials? That's the next step. The development of the biomass strategy is ongoing, and we will see what are the directions and measures of that are, and see what the strategy brings as soon as it's published, maybe in the next year. So that's also one of the questions that is addressed with the Bavarian Bioeconomy strategy. Then we have climate protection based on wood construction. As I said before, using wood is one of the big topics in the Bavarian bioeconomy. There was a very successful funding program on wood construction that was also well received by the builders. As far as I know, there were over 300 applications on that program, and when all the ongoing construction process and building processes are accomplished and finished, over 19,000 tons of carbon can be saved in those buildings as soon as they are finished. Another measure addressing one of the big challenges is the promotion of pilot, demonstration, and first of its kind plans. Again, we are in Straubing in the bioeconomy cluster, where the Bavarian State Ministry for Economic Affairs funded the construction of one of those pilot plants, demonstration plants on bio-based processes and bio-based technologies. At the moment, there's a big leak on those kind of plants, since we do have many technologies and solutions in labors and on a scientific level, but we do not have the technology level to bring them into an industrial application and industrial production amount. So therefore, the Biocampus multi-pilot plant, that's the name of it, is under construction right now, and scientists, companies, startups will be able from 2027, I guess, to test their biotechnological processes there and to bring their products and processes to the next level to get to an industrial level in the next step. And the last two measures are, for one, cross-cluster activities, and then the supra-regional networks in the bioeconomy. We do have the cluster Offensive Bayern in Germany that consists of very different industrial clusters. We do have a chemistry cluster, a wood and forestry cluster. There is the automotive cluster, the nanotechnology cluster, and also a cluster on industrial biotechnology, for example, and many more. And since the bioeconomy is kind of a holistic concept that needs to combine different expertises, different research areas, and different fields of industries and different sectors, the Bavarian Ministry for Economic Affairs supports those activities with so-called cluster projects, where different clusters work together on topics of the bioeconomy, like building new value chains. At the moment, we have one focusing again on the wood-based bioeconomy, where the chemistry cluster and the wood and forestry cluster And another initiative with expertise in the bioeconomy focuses on creating new applications with wood, since it's not only the construction sector, but also using wood in the chemistry sector and in the chemical industry. And therefore, there's an ongoing project this year, for example. And the last one was creating networks on the bioeconomy. This is not a typical Bavarian measure, but it is developed and implemented more on the national level. We do have two big networks. One is the project TransBib, which is the transfer network on boosting the industrial bioeconomy. It consists of over 20 project partners from different institutions, research and networking institutions that try to build the bridges between regional clusters and regional value chains to support the implementation of the bioeconomy. And on the level of the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, there is the Dialogplattform Industrielle Bioökonomie, which brings together mostly industrial partners and industrial stakeholders of the bioeconomy to develop the bio-based solutions for the different industries like the automotive sector and the chemical industry, and to bring them on an industrial level. Next, that I already addressed before, but I think we have a clearer focus on, is what about sustainability? The sustainable and circular implementation of the bioeconomy is at the heart of its target definition. That's quite clear, and within the concept we try to focus on that. But the bioeconomy is not sustainable per se. That's also true. So I brought this picture where you can see plastics that are used everywhere around the world in big amounts. But what is not to see on the first place is that all those products are bio-based. They are products of the bioeconomy, which doesn't mean that they are sustainable. The bigger question is, do we really need those single-use plastics all over? Or do we need to rethink how to use the resources more efficiently and more sustainably? That's just one example where this question can be asked. We have many different challenges in making the bioeconomy and implement the bioeconomy sustainably. One is the biomass availability. Another one is the acceptance of new technologies. We do have that question, for example, regarding the new genomic techniques that might create chances for plant breeding, for example, and the agriculture that creates the resources that are used in the bioeconomy. And I also talked about competitiveness and upscaling before. One of or two of the big challenges that are faced on the recent implementation level of the bioeconomy. If there are any questions so far, please feel free to just interrupt. So if there's not, Harm, I hope you would tell me if there's any questions by now. But
well, we have not seen any questions, so I can't imagine people don't have questions. So please put them in the chat or in the question and answer. It's below the screen. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So next is the question: what about innovation? And that's what brings me to many more examples of how biogenic resources can be used. I talked before about the traditional applications we have. We always use biomass. That's one of the basics of our economy, like forever. And I created some categories focusing on the applications that we now have in the bioeconomy. The first one is old resources, new products. And the first resource is wood, since we always used wood to create buildings and create houses. But there are also innovative ways, like using wood to create biopolymers and therefore then create glasses like this one, or another not so traditional way of using wood to create something like this computer keyboard. Many more applications that are possible, especially in the biopolymer sector, in using wood. And another example is hemp, that was traditionally used in the textile sector and is used or was produced to use the fibers in many different ways. We kind of forgot about that in the last few decades or centuries. But hemp comes back, and we use the fibers, for example, to create leather alternatives, like this one, to create suitcases like this that bring the same material properties like leather, but are plant-based, or to create insulation materials, for example, like this hemp-based material. The next category is new resources and old products. I've already talked about fungi and that you can make quite anything out of fungi. I think that's one of the main materials that will be used in the bioeconomy of the future. And you can make stuff like, for example, this protection packaging material that then can be used instead of styrofoam material, for example, and therefore replace the fossil-based equivalent that is made of fungi. The next one would be new resources and new products. We all know or expect that there are lots and lots of eggs that are used every day and therefore produce lots of eggshell waste that is put to disposal at the moment. But we do have a company, a small startup in Bavaria, that saw that potential of the eggshells, and they do create biopolymers out of the eggshell membrane, so the thin layer between the egg white and the eggshell. And they do not only produce the biopolymer out of it to use it as a plastic alternative, but they also tried to import some synthetic DNA into that material, and they were successful. As far as I know, they could successfully read out the information that was saved on the material. So this might be the USB stick of the future. And they also use the chalk of the eggshells, for example, to produce colorings and wall colorings that can then be used for building interior. I think one of my last examples is cattail in the category new resources, new products. The idea that comes with using cattail is much bigger than just having a new material, since due to the consequences of climate change and to cope with climate change, we need to restore the wetlands that are dried for agricultural, that have been dried out for agricultural use in the last decades, and to re-wet them. But therefore, we need new business models and use cases for the agriculture and for the farmers that do cultivate those cultures, like, for example, cattail or any other weeds that are growing on wetlands. And one example for how to use the cattail is to replace textiles that now use feathers, goose downs, to get insulation materials and warm clothing. And they can replace the down feathers with their own fluffy material, so you cannot see it in the photo. But if you wait longer and the cattail grows more, it kind of explodes and it gets a more fluffy consistency, and then can be used in that biopuff, as you can see there, to create jackets and winter textiles or insulated materials for the textile industry. Another application would be to use it as a packaging or produce paper with those paludicultures. And this packaging also recently was awarded with the German Packaging Prize for being so sustainable. Another good example of how using those materials that also help to cope with climate change can be brought into sustainable applications. Oh, and another example is again to use it as an insulation material. All those cultures can be used in many different ways. You can produce leather alternatives out of many different materials like apples, oranges, or plants like hemp and fungi. You can produce insulation materials out of different weeds and different lignocellulosic and wood-based materials. So there's many applications and solutions we already have, but maybe many more to come. And the last one is algae. As said before, there's the northern regions of Germany that do have a bigger focus on research in using algae in the bioeconomy. The examples of applications of that are, for example, to extract the pigments of algae and use it to dye textiles, or as this project, together with a well-known sports and textile company, they created this sneaker that was made with polymers that were extracted from algae. So we slowly come to an end. Next question is, what about high tech? I asked ChatGPT to show me the future of the bioeconomy and of all those biotech and AI applications and technologies to come. And hopefully, since this is a little disturbing, it won't be that way or that intense and labor-like. But we do have some trends in the bioeconomy, of course, one of which is artificial intelligence, as in every sector at the moment. It will influence the development of the bioeconomy. Genome editing is one topic that is discussed for the last few years on the European level, as you might know, especially the new genomic techniques like CRISPR-Cas. And chemical recycling in terms of the bioeconomy, when it comes to using enzymes to develop new recycling technologies, is also one of the topics. We do have nutrition and novel foods with the developing technologies in precision fermentation or the in vitro cultivation of meat. Also, mobility is addressed when it comes to biofuels. And we do have, as showed before, many new materials like platform chemicals in the chemical industry, mycelium, and of course the potential that comes with industrial residues that are at the moment often simply disposed, but could be used in a more efficient and sustainable way. I want to close with this graphic that was created by scientists from the Leibniz EGZ and they had the big question: what will our agriculture look in the future? What will it look like? And they called it Agrarsysteme der Zukunft. It is an interactive graphic that I do not want to deep dive into at the moment, and that goes way too far. But I think it shows all the technologies that will form our environment in the future, how agricultural products will be produced, how new technologies will influence agriculture and the way we produce our food, what our cities will look like. So if you're interested in the model they created and the foresight they created in that project, I think I put the link in one of the last slides, so feel free to click on the link and get more information on that graphic. And that's when I say thank you for your attention. I hope you are now very interested in the circular bioeconomy, and I could tell you something more of how we can use bio-based resources and bring them into a circular application and circular system. And I am open for your questions now and for a discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anna.
Those are the
Amazing.
last few slides.
Yes, no,
I'll stop for
yeah,
now.
yes. Thank you very much. Well, I'm impressed. I'm impressed by what you do, and I'm also impressed by what you do. So that's twice the same question with the thing on what you're doing. But we have a question from Christian Ortman, who says that the basic challenge will always be to scale these nice ideas up with respect to mass production and decrease their prices at the same time. The green elephant is one success story for one-way lab material. Do you see more of such examples that can compete to the present traditional productions? So,
What was the example that was
one-way lab materials. Apparently, there's a one-way lab material thing. Yes.
There are examples, especially in the construction sector or in sectors that traditionally come to use bio-based resources, of course, but that challenge is at the center of the development of the bioeconomy at the moment. We do not have that scaled up technologies, especially not in the chemistry sector. So we need market instruments, we need policy frameworks that really support innovators and companies and those applications to bring them on an industrial level to be competitive with fossil raw materials and traditional materials, and also the technologies that have been developed for many centuries when it comes to plastics, for example. We do not have that cases in the bioeconomy, or at least not that many.
Okay, there's one question. If you could leave the last page of the presentation up again, because people want to catch the QR codes.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
But I guess you get the presentation afterwards.
Yes, some people use their phone. Can you back the last one?
Yes. So our monitoring report on the status quo of the Bavarian bioeconomy is only available in German, but the Bavarian strategy, if you want to have a closer look on all those measures that come with it, it is also published in English. You should find it behind the QR code.
And these days we have all kinds of good helps who can change to whatever language you would like. Christian shared a link to it. It says it is called greenelephantbiotech.com. That's where we can find more information about what the example he gave.
Yeah.
So
what was Green Elephant?
Green Elephant Biotech. It's all in one line. greenelephantbiotech.com. That should
Thank you.
pop up later. Okay, great. No, and I think Christian pointed, I think, to the main issue also in Bavaria the scaling up thing, because we just saw in Sweden where the Northvolt scale up for batteries faltered. They have a green steel initiative, which is apparently not running too well. So you want to scale up, but if you scale up, you have to do it in a good way. Danger is lurking in all corners on these new projects. So how do you see there's a plethora of projects. Many projects are starting. The limitations are availability of processes to scale up to larger volumes. The next availability limiting thing is money, which is also be difficult. And the third one is goodwill in society / politics. So I think that
Yeah.
these are the three Chinese plates you have to on a stick and you have to wiggle to keep them going. Is there
Yeah.
and so that's an interesting one because you're from Bavaria, you're from the government. What is the take of Bavaria on that problem? Because I think that would be
Yeah.
sounding through all the issues we have.
I think that's one point where it comes, where it gets quite difficult for policy to be active there. One of the problems you addressed is that we are not quite innovation friendly in Europe
No.
when regard, for example, the US markets or
Yeah.
the Asian markets. And that is one of the big problems, I guess. We try to foster those big investments and support that with funding programs, support that with networking events, for example, to bring together those startups and investors
Yeah.
that that could scale up the innovations that are on a low technological level at the moment. But I don't think there's a good solution at the moment to really bring the capital into innovations and into the applications we have. We do have the solutions, so I think we're not on a research level that we don't come out of, but we do not get into the technological level of really bringing money into that technologies and into that application to bring them on the market.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the social aspect.
Yeah.
Especially at the moment, sustainability is not
No.
one of the big drivers anymore, since it was, or as it was a few years ago. So the price is the deciding thing for people.
Yeah.
And as long as the sustainable materials, the sustainable products are way more expensive than the used ones, the fossil-based ones, the bioeconomy products won't be competitive with those. And therefore, we also work on market instruments, for example, quotes or certificate systems like we have with the emission trade, the ETS.
Yeah.
And if there's instruments like that that really could be a motor for the markets of bio-based materials and bio-based products, that would help way more than political measurements.
Yeah.
And
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, people, if you have questions, please put them in because if there can be discussion. There we go. Peter Nisselbeck writes, actually, we do not have more than a few examples of circular economy running, and we still pollute the environment. Well, thank you, Peter, for this nice. I know Peter very well, so I can. All right. Are there any examples for environmental remediation and bioeconomy, biomass, nutrient reductions, etc.? So he says environmental remediation and bioeconomy examples. Do you have anything of that?
Remediation. I have to check that. What is remediation?
All right. No, I did it a long time. That is, I did it as a fun project. We had waste from water cleaning, and that was filled up with heavy metals. So we had a whole acre of sand put out, and we put plants on it to get the
those fast-growing trees.
The heavy metals would go into the plants, and we would take the plants out and remove the heavy metals.
Yeah.
Remediation. Yes.
I know. I heard about that. Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any more examples like that?
Well,
I think one of the best. Sorry.
go ahead. No.
One of the best examples is the one with restore the wetlands. I think that's great potentials. So
Yes.
on the one hand, we have that big opportunity in coping with climate change and bind the carbon dioxide in those wetlands. And on the other hand, we can produce plants that can be brought into sustainable applications. The bigger question at the moment is in that topic, how to cultivate those cultures, those plants, those weeds in an efficient way and in a technological, in a good way, and how to harvest those. I think many challenges in that at the moment.
I have a tip for you. You have to genetically modify them towards hemp because that
Yeah.
grows very fast. But I think that's a difficult discussion these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, exactly. And listening to you and to other people, and this is not my field. I'm in a very different field to make for sure. But I have the idea that we have a global ecosystem for innovations where you have all kinds of companies popping up, but yet the machine which turns these innovations into profitable businesses has its core in the US at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is developing a different one, a different model where you have also a business-like model because the government gave away room for private investigators. So Europe is sort of not in that game. So
absolutely, we play on a whole different level when it comes to investments, and they do have another mentality in that. So I think that's part of the problem, but I'm not sure how to solve that. First step would be to bring more equity into the market.
Well, then the next question is future competitivity, right? So if you want to be competitive, you want to have a society which is profitable, which produces money, because sadly that's still the game. We all know that's not a very good thing to do, but currently that's the game you have to do. So you have to make money. So now we lose it out, especially because renewable plastics are twice as expensive as plastic from other countries. Nice oil products are very cheap these days. So they come in by tons and containers and whatever do we have. So currently it's not interesting, but times will change, and
hopefully.
we might have the edge. So I think that's the other thing where in Europe you have to think about. It has to be a really long-term view on it. But where Draghi had his report talking about that long-term innovation in Europe. But then we have the European particularities, which means every 4 years there's an election going on. So we have a 4-year horizon, which is typically not suitable for these type of problems, right? And then we have 27 countries, or depending on how you look at it. So we have and they don't elect all the time. So we have a continuous lack of future-looking things. So that's what we have to work with. So I think that's your part of the world, is to be very clear about what is the situation currently. And what we need very clever people, young people like you, clever people, to find a way to turn this to start this little machine up, this innovation machine, the European innovation machine. We need. And and to put a little weight on your shoulder, right? One of the places in Europe where they're very good at this is Bavaria. So good luck.
I think there's many ongoing things happening in Bavaria, and of course that makes it easier to talk about it, since things might be easier in development somehow. But to bring more consistency in policy and more of a long-term perspective. Hopefully that will get better in the future. I think that problem is known. And there are so many strategies, and then you have one period where you're focusing on a topic and it completely loses in the next. So hopefully will get that running and bring the bioeconomy out in the field.
Well, we have to.
Of course, sustainable products, and there are so many solutions, and it's really interesting and positive field to work in.
Yes.
To see that we do have the chances to make that big shift, to success the transformation, but
yes.
we have
Yes.
to support it.
And we have to do it at the European level. One remark to support you. I think 10 years ago, we weren't thinking we would see so many electric cars we have today.
Yeah.
So fast changes are possible, quick changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sadly, America started it. China's taking over. Europe is trouble. That's the sequence things happen these days. So we might see a few more of those. So that's the but the other thing in my question is if Bavaria is a because you need some clout, you need a number of people and sitting on big piles of money to get this thing going. Bavaria is one of those regions. I'm from Holland. I always think Holland is the best, but not always. That's not always the truth. So let's take Holland in this one.
We're on the same level.
I suspect that the Italians, as a due to the way the Italians are constructed, might have in the north of Italy might have some projects running there. Are there any other areas in Europe where you think there we have bodies where we can start from? Because you can't do it on your own. You never can.
No, and especially you cannot succeed when you only have a look on the regional level. So the bioeconomy will be a European topic.
Yes.
It works on global markets. So I really think we need to bring it all together, bring together the US perspectives, the Asian perspectives, and bring Europe on that level to have big investments and to have the markets for the bioeconomy. I think we will not succeed if we only bring up the solutions in Bavaria. We don't do it, and many other regions work on that, and we have great networks that try to do that. And at least there are many strategies that are closely related to the bioeconomy on the European level that are upcoming, like the Biotech Act, for example. We will have a life science strategy on the European level that is under development at the moment. So I have some hope in those strategies and how they really support each other and are embedded into each other to at one time or at some time have like one strategy that brings it up all together. And
but I think it's a machine which has to start.
Yeah.
It's sort of ecological or a being or how you can look at it or a network which just have to find a way of starting and then generate enough on the end to funnel back. So also then it has to be sadly a financial circular thing.
We do not only have a resource cycle, but also.
No. I learned that in Bavaria. If you don't think or you don't understand what's going on, you're paying attention to the wrong things. And luckily, the right things are only two things. The one is power, and the other is money. So, so if you know how to handle that, and that's where you need politicians for. If you know how to handle that game, you can use the money and power to drive our. That's where you
need to get that clear that sustainability alone will not be the motivating part in bringing the bioeconomy.
Okay, during my talks, people thought, well, he's talking quite a lot, so let's ask some questions. So we have some more questions for you. What about the willingness of the Bavarian people to wear lederhos's made out of fungi? Are they being sold and do people buy them? Do you know that?
We know that there are studies, you might have heard of it, there are different studies that people say they are motivated to pay more for sustainable products.
Yes.
But in reality, they don't do that. There's quite difficulty in those there's a gap between what people say they do and what they actually do. So that is one of the problems. But when it comes to the Lederhos'n made of fungi, that was just one product. It is not on the market, I guess.
Okay.
But we do have examples where bio-based products, when it comes to applications that are clothing, for example, or textiles, there is a willingness to pay more.
Yeah.
And there are many positive examples of big companies. And for example, in Bavaria, we do have a company producing jeans, and they try to bring out a new jeans with hemp. So that's one example where the scaling up process worked.
Yeah.
But we will see if people are motivated to pay for that sustainable product.
Well,
I think.
If it's cheap, it's not good. So let's reverse that one.
And there are applications where the paying more will
Yes.
work and where they do, but there are also applications. We see that when it comes to food,
Yeah.
the cheapest supermarket and discounter is the one that people buy food, if it's produced sustainably or not. And it's quite relatable
I know.
in the material sector. So
Well, if we try to change things, we have to be aware of the reality. So we can't live in a fantasy world. So that's for sure. Yeah, but on the other hand, I see, because this question about Lederhos's triggered me, was if some, because in the Netherlands you have them also, Instagram places where you have tourists lining up to eat some awful cookie or so we
yeah.
made. So, if it's cool, um,
Yeah, if it's a trend.
yes, it's a,
And
yeah. So why don't you have a fungi Lederhose? Oh,
yeah,
why you are not hip.
it
You're not.
might be the trend of the future to
It's not.
wear those vegan fungi
Yes, yes.
trousers.
I
Yeah,
see things change. Well, smoking is out.
hopefully.
Sadly, the industry figured out that you can make people vape again. But so far, smoking is off, and at least the streets have cleared up quite nicely.
Yeah.
All right. One other question from Christian. The struggle in bioeconomy reminds me on similar problems when you think about animal protein sources. At least in Germany, there's hardly any chance to get insect larvae delivering burger patties, despite it being much cheaper and much more sustainable. People won't buy it. All right, so we don't buy, we call them mealworm in the Netherlands, insect-based proteins, which you
Yeah,
put into lovely food. We all know that. And you can eat it, and there's nothing wrong with it.
that's one of the.
But I'm not going to eat a burger. That's the general.
Yeah, we do have some projects ongoing where insects are used in farming, in agriculture, when it comes to meat production. They
Yes.
use it as a feedstock, as
Yes.
feed supplement. So
Yes. Mm-hmm.
that's quite successful, as far as I know. And there are ongoing projects on a more upscaled level at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But
No,
yeah, when it comes to food, that novel food discussions are quite recent on the European level, and on the European level we have that discussion on if vegan products are allowed to be called meat
oh
or
yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So
That one. Yes, I heard that. Yes. Yeah.
we still can't believe that we really have to do that.
Yes. No.
To discuss about that if we have real problems in bringing out those innovative foods and applications.
Well,
But that's one of
it is all the fact that we can't believe it means that we are not in the right bubble.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean,
It's a concern, obviously.
you can consider it ridiculous, but it's also reality. So
Yeah.
apparently we're not singing the proper song to make them sing with us.
Mm.
So if in my biology presentations, I always say, well, the biggest problem for lacking of progress is what you see in the mirror every morning. So yeah, but I mean, nobody's going to do it unless you do it.
Yeah.
That's why I happily put all this
Yeah.
stuff on your shoulders.
And that's why we really go into knowledge transfer and
Yes.
to network and foster the social dialogue on the bioeconomy, since every single one of us can decide which
Yes,
product he or she
exactly.
buys.
Yeah.
And
Did you?
that might be one of the big drivers.
Yes, exactly. Okay. I think we might have no more questions here. No more questions here. Thank you very much, Christian, Peter, for all the questions. Very lovely and very useful to bring the discussion more alive. I want to thank Anna for being here. I want to thank Simon for setting us up in such a way that we actually succeeded in finishing the webinar. And I'm very excited to have met you, and I'm even more excited to learn later on what you will do in Bavaria. Anna, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
And have a pleasant